Hello, John, and welcome to Are You Serious? Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me on. I am serious about CSR.
Well, that's exactly the type of guest that we want on the show. As I've mentioned before, this series is to help individuals like myself who, well, I've fallen into a social impact role, but I don't really know what CSR is. And hopefully speaking to experts like yourself, no pressure, we can hopefully learn more about what we can do as individuals, personally and professionally, to do good more often. So with that, we'll start with the first question, which is hopefully something that everyone listening and watching can take away and implement today, which is, if you had to choose, what one habit would you recommend people adopt at home that will make the biggest positive impact in the world?
Well, I'm really pleased because I think it's important to break it down to what the simple things you can do at home, because those are also the things you can do when you're in a role, whether it's an organization or a business. And I'm going to point out that most of the energy used by things like your computers are used when they're off. These things are not actually off. They're remembering the last 15 websites you went to, your television sets remembering your last favorite channels. And I'm going to guess, if you're like me, you walk around the house and you find chargers hanging off the wall. Unplug them. They're vampires, and they're sucking power right out of the wall, power that's often generated by coal, and which emits greenhouse gases. You're paying for it, and you're getting nothing from it. Particularly for those of us during this COVID situation, we're recording this, I'm working from home, and I have the opportunity, my home is now my office, and I can really annoy my family by going around and pulling these things out of the wall. It's really rewarding.
Right, interesting. I did not see that one coming, but so what you're saying is when devices are plugged in and you're not using them, that's when they're using most energy, is that right?
Well, they're using energy, and you don't realize it, but it's really the chargers that are in the wall, because if you feel them and they're warm, that means they're pulling in energy. They're pulling electricity, because they're actually they're charging a device that's not there attached to them. They don't turn off just because they're not, plugged into your iPhone or your Android or what have you.
Yeah.
But I also encourage people with docking stations. Your laptop may have a docking station. You've got a screen. What color is the little light glowing? It's on. Mm-hmm. It is in standby mode, not off.
Yeah. Okay. So it's wastes of energy that aren't required. So the lights on, obviously they help because that lights up the room, but
well, yeah.
It's the little standby light on the TV, on your laptop. Because I've left my laptop charging all day, even though it's 100%. So it really doesn't need the energy. So I may as well take that out just now. But
well, I think that's the important thing in sustainability. People think we're asking for, esoteric things, difficult things, or to do without things. And in many cases, it's things you'll never miss. It's just a matter of getting that new habit going to do things in a way that's more efficient and more effective with the resources that we have.
Awesome. All right. Well, everyone listening, you take out those plugs.
Well, don't turn it off until we're done. Turning up. This is valuable stuff you're hearing here.
Exactly. We're just getting started, which is good.
So, CSR I take seriously, not myself so much. I think you can do it in a way that's fun and memorable and interesting and engaging. Nobody wants to be scolded, or very few of us.
No, very true. And that was something I was thinking earlier. I was like, I don't take myself seriously, but I take what I do seriously.
Exactly.
And I think the more people appreciate that, the better, because your job is one part of you and you are another part. And that's a whole other topic where we can think about how professional do you need to be. But no, I like that. So, right. So the next question that I have for you was one that we spoke about briefly on LinkedIn, where you thought it was quite a strong question and could be provocative. So I thought let's go with that. So, are there any CSR movements that you don't agree with or believe need a robust foundation before you apply it globally? Anything that sticks out that you think, yeah, that could be beneficial to the planet, but the way people are going about it is wrong and is promoting the wrong message?
Well, I think, the difference between environmentalism and sustainability is sustainability balances the need for environmental, social, and economic or governance impacts, and to make sure that you're taking those all into consideration. And whenever an organization focuses too much on any one of them, that isn't sustainable over the long term. So it's easy to look at it. You think it's an organization that's obsessed with profits, and they ignore the environmental impacts they're having, or they don't pay their workers well because they're trying to squeeze the last bit of coin out they can and make the most money. Those are not sustainable. So I think it's really critical that we don't get caught up in the tyranny of believing in something so passionately that we lose sight of the fact that it has to be a balance, because we can be so idealistic about something that it can't work in the real world, and therefore it will never happen. And we see a lot of that where people just say, just do this, or we need to do this now. We need to shut this down. We need to stop this. And in some cases, and I'll give you an example, there are absolutely no social or other benefits of it, and that's food waste.
Mm.
1/3 of the food produced on the planet is never eaten, and it's perfectly good and it's perfectly viable. At the same time, 1 in 5 families doesn't know where their next meal is coming from. And a lot of it is a waste of distribution or inefficiencies in production. And then you get into the more developed world where it's food that goes bad in your refrigerator because you just simply forgotten it, and you sniff it and say, I'm not sure that's still good, and you throw it out.
Guilty of that.
There's no benefit to that. Nobody is benefiting from the fact that we're wasting that. And in fact, it contributes not just the environmental impacts of creating and developing that and growing that food, but then the methane that's emitted if it is allowed to rot in landfills. And so the earth produces enough food for every man, woman, and child on the planet without increasing our agricultural footprint, and deforestation is another big issue. So that one, there's absolutely no benefit why we're not doing it, and we're not really addressing it as individually and as a society and a world. But you can go too far in some things and say, okay, fossil fuels, we know they contribute to climate change, and we know climate change is an existential threat to our species. But energy is also, as the UN said in Sustainable Development Goal number 7, it's essential. It's essential for longevity, quality of life. In fact, it's essential for life itself as well as our economy. And so saying we need to stop immediately, no one's going to do that. No society can afford to do that. But coming up with a way to transition in time, and yes, we are late. We've been warned for decades, and it's much like the coronavirus. People say, why can't we treat climate change like the coronavirus? And I would answer that we did. We ignored the threat until it was right in our front yard, right in our front door, and it was unavoidable. And that's the same thing, unfortunately, we do as a species.
Yeah, I've seen a clip of Bill Gates speaking in 2015 about the next pandemic and what we need to do and how we're underprepared. 5 years later, it's happening. And we are underprepared because most of the time you don't face a problem until it's right in front of your face.
Right, exactly.
Okay, maybe now I need to get that out of the way. It was interesting on the food waste situation. So in the UK, I guess the government's response or the council's response to food waste was to give you a small food compost bin for the house, that if you had any food waste, you would put it in this compost bin that has a compostable bag, and then you would put it in with your garden waste. So when you cut the grass, and we've got a bin that's for garden waste. But I guess that's the government or the council's way of promoting you to it's not promoting lack of, or it's not promoting you to stop wasting food. It's just saying, here is where you put your food waste. Can you think of anything that the government or councils could do that would change the mindset from here's where you put your food waste to here's how to not waste food?
That's a really good question, but I'll come back to it. It's a societal thing.
Mhm.
You don't waste something you value. And our meals used to be communal events with the family, and back in the days when we weren't isolating at home with our friends. But now we grab and go. We don't value food. We don't value the social interaction that comes from sharing food and breaking bread together and having a good pint or a glass of wine together. And so we don't see it as a valuable thing. And when something has got value, you don't waste it. And so it's a real mind shift that we have to get to. This program you described, it's showing its value as compost,
Mhm.
but it's still emitting the methane. It's just decomposing in your yard, not in a landfill. And it still took the water and everything else to produce that food. It's not really getting at the idea that food is something that we should treasure and value. Those who do without it certainly recognize the value of it.
Yeah.
People in food service, and I've worked in the food service industry, know that nutrition is essential for your health and well-being, for learning in school or recovering if you're ill and so forth. And I'd love to see more campaigns on the value of food. I saw one which a brilliant image. It was someone slicing a carrot, and each carrot was a coin. Each slice of the carrot was a coin. I thought that was a clever idea. I'm not sure if it will work,
Mhm.
but I'd like to see something more along those lines of not throwing away something that has value to you or to someone else. One of the things I was partly responsible for was creating a cookbook that we put online that talked about recipes you could make from food that you ordinarily waste. And obviously your stale bread becomes a very good French toast with the right other ingredients. But the winning recipe was the one who took the bread and showed you how to brew beer from it.
Uh,
I'm not sure it was very good beer, but
yeah, you
but
still get drunk. Interesting. So, would you have a link to that book?
that one's not. I don't think it's available anymore. It was a
Right.
project I did for a place
Yeah.
I was working. But yeah, if people want to hit me online, I'd be more than happy to send them. I do have a PDF of it. Sadly, it's only in English.
Yeah, no, definitely. That'd be really interesting. I was going to ask something, but I was too interested in what you were saying. So
I mentioned beer, and it's
yeah,
gone.
yeah. I'm like, no, maybe have a drink tonight. It was that I think people are now appreciating the value of food because, well, certainly right now because of COVID, that the supermarkets are now barren. And
Mm.
I was making lunch yesterday and I was being moaned at because I was using noodles, and I was told that they will last. The bread won't last. They'll last longer. Why are you using? I'm like, it's noodles, but it's yeah. It was more apparent now that we are valuing food a lot more. It would be interesting to see. I don't know where you would get the statistics or the information from, but what the difference in food waste will be from now compared to 3 months ago. Because a lot more people will value food now that it is a little bit of a scarcity for some people.
Sure, and I think we're valuing our friends and our neighbors more. I
Hmm.
can't say how much I love. In fact, anyone from Italy is watching this or hears this. The videos of you all singing from your balconies, that sense of community and shared fate, that you're in it together rather than the selfishness that leads people to go to the grocery store and hoard up and stock up on 2 years worth of supplies, leaving nothing for their friends and neighbors. But I just love those videos because that's how we as a society will get through, whether it's the COVID or climate change or any other threat that we face as a species, is recognizing that the concept of not in my backyard is obsolete
Hmm.
because your backyard is someone else's front yard, and we are all in this together.
Yeah, we're all on the one planet. We're all the same species. Doesn't matter what country you're from, what color you are, yeah,
Faith, background, what have you,
yeah, exactly.
gender,
This
age.
Yeah, like this virus takes no prisoners. Um, it doesn't care who you are or what you are. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
an interesting thing that's come out of it is, you've seen the pictures from in the U.S. from NASA that
Mhm.
show the reduction in pollution, or the pictures of dolphins swimming in the canals of Venice, just because the humans have just pulled back quite a bit. I mean, I think that's the ultimate demonstration that we can and do have an impact on the planet.
Yeah.
And so maybe at the end of this, we could learn, hey, wait a minute, I like dolphins swimming there. I like the fact that the air is cleaner, and finding ways to not tie those beneficial things to an economic slowdown, because we can be smarter. We're a very smart species when we
Mhm.
put our minds to it and we agree to do it. We put people on the moon, uh,
Yeah.
and we have cured polio and other diseases, and we will get past COVID, and we will get past climate change and anything else. Um, we just have to do it together. We have to commit ourselves to really doing it. But now we're getting very esoteric, and you
Yeah.
probably want to get more focused on corporate responsibility.
No, no, no. Like I was walking my dog last night, and I was looking up to the stars, and I seen the International Space Station. I was thinking, bet you they're happy that they're up there, and they want to extend their stay. They it's funny because you mentioned NASA, and I'm getting off topic here, but I think it's kind of relevant. Like that view from the International Space Station, where they're looking at the planet, and it's just this big ball of life, and you can't really see the details of it, and there's all this carnage going on. It'll just look like the same planet. Um, yeah, it must be an interesting perspective from up there. That's for sure.
Well, and even the pictures that were sent back during the moon missions, the picture of they call it the blue marble. It's the Earth by
Yeah,
itself in the black vastness of space. You know what you don't see in that picture? You don't see international boundaries. You don't see differences between people. You just see one planet with a very, very thin atmosphere between it and what is certain instantaneous death.
yeah. And I think if everyone got that view, if everyone was up there and was seeing what these astronauts seen, they would want to do everything in their power to take care of this planet and do the best for it. So I think, yeah, it is pretty relevant, that view from space. You want to take care of this fragile planet because it's the only one in the universe that we know of that can produce life and can sustain us as human beings. So I think we've got quite a um, what's the word, obligation to take care of where we're from. So um, well, like that moves on quite swiftly to the next question, which is, personally, what do you think is the most pressing issue our planet faces? What can we do as individuals, and how should we as individuals and organizations and societies approach solving this problem?
I think the biggest problem we have is that we're waiting for someone else to solve the problem. We're waiting for business, we're waiting for government. It is us. The power is in our hands. Every time you make a purchasing decision, if you know how that business is run, you're voting with your wallet, with your euros, with your crowns, with your pounds, with your yuan, whatever currency you're using. You're voting for a socio, political, and economic system that created whatever it is you're buying. And therefore, we have a lot more power in our hands to change the world if we only choose to do so. And I know it may seem like that's a tiny little act, but that is how things get started. There was a schoolgirl in Sweden who sat outside of her school, and she's ignited a global movement where all the politicians, all the opinion leaders, all the business leaders were unable to do it. And that shows you the power of just one individual having the right message at the right time in the right place can be that spark, and a spark in a positive sense that starts to glow, that lights another candle, and so on. And so we have the ability in our daily lives not to feel helpless and not to feel powerless in these decisions and what's going on around us, and really being conscious of that, because the sense of isolation that people have and individuality, we really have to focus on the idea that we are all in this together. Like you were saying, we're all one. And together, there's billions of us, and then just imagine the power of billions of people doing the right thing, whether it is the right thing for the environment, the right thing for society, the right things for our children, our friends, our neighbors. And so I know that's not exactly, you're probably just thinking of a specific tactic, but that I think is important because that underlies the sense of helplessness that people have in the face of huge issues. We're not helpless. COVID, wash your hands, cough into your elbow. These are not, we're not talking about massive austerity measures here that can stop this thing. And with climate change, yes, there's some really big things we're going to need to do, and social injustices and inequity, but they all start with the little things that are in our power to do right away, with our purchasing decisions, with the products we choose to buy, the things we choose to do with or without, or the way we interact with each other when we see something on the public transit, and we'll be back on public transit one day, where if you see an incident of oppression or racism or something, just step in and don't confront the person doing it. Just turn to the person who's they're attempting to victimize and act like they're your best friend. You've known them forever. Say, "Oh, Bob, I haven't seen you in forever. Hey, where are you going? Arlington? Hey, let me ride with you." And just ignore the other person and just end that cycle. If we end the cycle of that, again, it's a little thing we can do, but I think you never imagine the power of something like that, not just for that individual, but wouldn't it be great if we all just did stuff like that all the time? We could wipe out so many things.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when you put it that simply, you think, oh, well, why do we not do it? And I think a lot of it would come down to fear of the unknown, or if I make a decision or if I act in a way that I've not acted before, I don't know the consequences. So what's going to happen? It's a surprise. But I know if your example of on the bus, if you see racism on the bus, if you sit back and don't speak, you know that that person is not going to harm you. But I guess it's a lack of knowing, a lack of knowledge of how to handle that situation. And I think when it comes to people tackling problems as individuals and trying to figure out, oh, well, that's actually industry's problem, they should be solving that problem. I think it's paralysis by knowledge. There's so much, it's so easy to access information that people don't know where to start. They don't know what the best choice is or what they should focus on. So what advice would you give to people who are trying to think about doing good, or, making that change to actually step into the unknown and make the right decision, or the decision that is good, and not just be the spectator?
Well, you say, the fear of the unknown, but there's also, we also know the known, right? So if you're on public transit and there's 40 people on that bus, and one person is engaging that act, there's 38 other people who can band together and just end it. But we know that if we don't act, we're always going to be in the same situation. We know the consequences of that. It's the old phrase, if you always do what you always did, you're going to get what you always got. And if nothing, and other people say, be the change you want to see in the world. And I think that that's part of it, because the fear of the unknown shouldn't prevent us from accepting the known, especially when the known is unacceptable.
Yeah. Right. That definitely sums up. I think, so in terms of quality over quantity, in terms of like being good, you can start to separate your trash into plastics, metals, tin cans. That will have some effect on waste and what happens to it, and hopefully it'll be recycled properly. But then you have decisions around, okay, so if you're going to donate to charity, what charities are going to do the most good with your money? So how much punch are you getting per pound that you, or per dollar that you donate? It's a difficult one. I've maybe looked into it. There's a phrase called effective altruism, which is trying to figure out how much good you can do, squeeze every little bit of good out of those pennies. What would you say to people who are trying to think about, oh, how can I do the best that I possibly can, and how can I be the goodest that I can?
Well, when you talk about separating your trash, I'll go one further. I really like having reusable shopping bags. So when I go shopping, I don't need to take a plastic bag anymore. And I've even seen some stores that they give them away, but then there's a sign at the store when as you're walking to the door of the store before you go in that says, "Did you remember your bag?" Because if I remember to put it in my car and I get into the store, I don't have it with me. So it's little things like that. As for evaluating charities, there's websites and charity trackers and so forth, but I would look for opportunities to volunteer, to put your values into actions. We're seeing a lot more of this with the research that shows that people want to work for an employer that matches their values. But if you want to help feed the people who are hungry, go down to a kitchen and help feed the people who are hungry. If you want to help the National Health Service right now in this time of crisis, find out what you can do. Maybe there are things you can donate. Maybe staying the heck away so that you don't risk infecting people is the best thing you can do. But you mentioned before we started recording about taxi drivers helping to bring people and bring food to the people who are working, from restaurants that are donating it. Get involved in something like that. There's more than money, and money is certainly good. A lot of these organizations are just crushed for people who will come in and help them do what it is that they're trying to do and do well. More hands is often what they're looking for.
Yeah, it's put your time and your skills to good use instead of thinking what you can do with your money, because right now a lot of people, they'll need to be saving their money.
Absolutely.
But your time and your skills can be put to good use in your local area. Like if people take a local view on this, and everyone in the world, say, or everyone that's able is helping out locally, then that will have a global impact.
Right. The other thing I'll point out is right now, obviously physically going places may not work, but we're online right now. That means every person watching this or listening to this has access to technology. There's probably someone in your neighborhood who's, doing the same thing you are, which is socially isolating, or even in quarantine or in isolation if they're actually already ill, that could use just a little human interaction. Yes, you can't physically maybe go there, but you have the tools. You're sitting in front of it right now to connect with someone and to just have a moment and a conversation and just help them to get through the loneliness and feeling like there's nobody out there and nobody cares. And they exist in every community, and we can do those interactions virtually as easily as we can work from home or do a video conference or a teleconference. It's in your hands right here. That's a connection device.
Yeah, no, too true. No, brilliant. So I know that you are familiar with the global goals, but I'm hoping that when answering this question, you can quickly give an overview of what the Sustainable Development Goals are. And then, so in your organization and you personally, which goals are your company focusing on primarily, and what are you doing as part of that focus? So description of the Sustainable Development Goals first, just a brief one for people watching who don't know about them, and then what goals are your company currently focusing on?
Sure. There are 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals that were produced by the United Nations, and they are an international consensus of the key issues facing our planet universally. And it's things like hunger, gender inequalities, and life on land, life in the water, climate change, just macro issues. And then within each of them, there are actions that organizations and individuals can take to address those goals. Hunger is another one. Waste is another one. But for my organization, where I work now, is an energy company. And we do a combination of natural gas, wind, solar, carbon offsets, you name it. And so sustainable development goal number 7 is affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. And it recognizes the essential role that energy in all its form plays in our lives, not just for our quality of life, but often for life itself, as well as the economic development of our communities and our countries where we live. And so obviously that's a natural one for my company to have gotten involved with because we're an energy company. But we also picked up the ones about building sustainable modern cities. We've worked on diversity with our supplier diversity program and our efforts to make sure that our workforce reflects the demographics of the communities where we exist and operate, and to have equal opportunity. So almost anything you do can be related to one or more of these goals. And the idea is to figure out, in my opinion, any organization that says we're doing all 17, you're probably spreading yourselves too thin.
Yeah.
Go for the ones that you're directly able to impact, the ones you can directly tie into your business model. Like I said, an energy company focusing on making sure that energy is affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern. And if you think about it, when we introduce new products, higher efficiency products, is energy to lower and no carbon choices. That is part of modern energy and sustainable energy, but we're also looking at the affordability of it, because if people can't afford it, it's not going to do any good.
Yeah, that's right. So in terms of that balance between obviously your company wanting to make a profit and making energy affordable, yeah, you've historically it would have been natural gas, I guess, as your primary source of energy, but now with renewable, are you seeing that helping you be able to, as an organization, reduce your costs for energy to the individual?
Well, it's interesting because part of what we focus on is energy efficiency, knowing that the energy that is the most the most cost effective is the energy that's not used. It also has the lowest carbon footprint. But one of the things people don't realize, with particularly in the U.S., with natural gas replacing coal, most of the carbon emission reductions we've been able to achieve as a country have been because of switching out the energy. At the same time, renewables are growing, and they're growing fast, but they're still not more than 20% of the overall energy mix. And so when they're not producing, you need to have backup power, and that's where natural gas has been stepping in. Is it going to be permanently a blend of renewables and natural gas? No, I think 100 years from now, I don't think the energy picture is going to resemble the one we're seeing now. But 25 or 30 years from now, with the amount of energy that we use for all these things, it's going to be a blend of the best products and getting them as clean as possible and as efficient as possible, at the same time ramping up the renewables. Once you solve the issues of intermittency and storage, renewables will really take off. But long duration, long-term storage, and long output storage, the batteries are still not there. They're coming. And there's probably somebody in a garage somewhere like Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs who's going to invent it, before we get off the line today, and that'll change everything. That's both the promise and the threat of globalization. If you're entrenched on your own business, you got to embrace those things because they're coming, and they're coming fast.
So, how much of a role? I guess it's interesting to hear from a US perspective, because you have your individual states and then you have the USA as a whole and the government. How much of a role does the government have in helping you, I guess, transition from fully natural gas to renewable? And yeah, I'm just interested to know what their role is within that.
Well, it's interesting because different. We talk about the federal level first. The different administrations have different priorities, and so, previous administrations have put in incentives for renewable power. Going back to Jimmy Carter putting solar panels on the roof of the White House to try to encourage people to do it, and then the next administration coming in and removing them, and so that changes it. But what I think is really more important is when President Trump made what I would call the lamentable decision to pull the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement. the first thing you saw was cities, states, and businesses pledging to maintain the targets, and
Mm.
and the we're still in it movement. And my company, we set targets in line with the Paris Agreement. And the day after that announcement was made, someone asked me, someone at the highest levels of the company said, "So, do we change our goal?" And I said, "Well, did the science change? The science hasn't changed. We still set this goal. We know it's achievable. We have a plan to get there. Why should we change just because somebody thinks that, has changed their definition? We've said all along this is the right thing to do. So it's not the right thing to do just because it's politically correct. It's the right thing to do because it's the right thing to do for our business and for our country and our society and our planet. And we have never wavered in that commitment. And I'm pleased to see it, because it gets down to what we were saying at the outset. It's individual action. Expecting somebody else to do it isn't going to get us there. But maybe they did us a great favor, because it forced people to really look at themselves and say, why are we doing this? If we said it's the right thing, why should we change course now?
Mm.
And I'm hopeful that the US will not shirk its responsibility on the global stage in this or any regard. As a full-fledged member of the community of nations, I'm not going there and talking about the leader of the free world or anything nationalistic like that. But
Yeah.
as part of the community of nations, we need to do our part.
Yep. And I'm in the same boat as you. I'm a big believer in that if it's scientifically correct, then it's very difficult to argue with. So yeah, that I'm sure we could talk for hours about Mr. T, but we shall.
Yeah, it is tea.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with allergies here. Every plant
Yep.
is. The trees are all blooming here. It's actually lovely if you could go outside.
Oh wow! What's the temperature like right now? So where is it you're based again? Is it Washington? Is that right?
I'm based in Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. Let's see. I'm not sure what the temperature is outside. I can actually check. I'm connected. Of course, I'm going to give it to you in Fahrenheit, and then someone's going to have to do math.
Yeah, I need to do the quick calculation.
Yeah. How good are you at that? I used to be good at that.
Ish. I can come up with a good average.
All right, so we're about 75 Fahrenheit right now.
I think that's around 18, 19 degrees Celsius. I think that's
Short,
good. That's
it's short sleeves.
Well, that's summer for.
Well, for where you are, yes, it's
Yeah.
spring here.
So right now, well, today has been 9 degrees Celsius and the sun has been out. But during the night it was -3 Celsius.
Yeah, so you still got a ways to go before summer.
Still got a ways to go, yeah. And even though we have a while to go, we don't get much of a summer. It's pretty miserable. That's why we all fly away. But now we're all stuck here probably. No summer holidays for us here in the UK or anyone really. But yeah,
But when you think about that, you think of the deprivations that our previous generations went through. Many of us, and I realize that there's many people who are deeply, deeply suffering. But for a lot of us, we're being asked to stay in the homes that we have selected with the people we love the most. Right now, all the amenities, the heat, the hot water, the electricity, the internet are all working. The food systems have not broken down. Think about what my grandmother went through during the war, she lived through World War I as a child and World War II as an adult. Deprivations that people live with every day. This is, it's difficult, but it's not a hardship.
Yeah.
For many of us. Now, for those of us that it is, major sympathy and all that. I'm not trying to be insensitive.
Of course. No, I completely agree with you. I think that's a really fitting way to put the situation right now. There have been generations before that have suffered through some terrible times without the connectivity that we have, the infrastructure that we have. So yeah, it's a bit of a shock to the system for a lot of people, and there are a lot of people suffering. But the ability to be able to do good and do good quickly and help these people has never been greater. So if someone is struggling, we can help them instantly. And that itself is quite reassuring, which is great. So So I'll move on to the last question, which is a bit more personal, and will hopefully help people understand a bit more about you and why you got into what you're doing. So what was a pivotal moment in your career or life that convinced you to work in a CSR role?
Yeah, it's interesting because my background is in business and communications, and I basically got into CSR by accident. I'd done one project at a company I worked for that they thought was a thankless and impossible task, and it had somehow worked out. So they gave me the next one, which was related to this sustainability stuff and something that was coming from our parent company in Paris, uh, relating to emissions reductions, which in the US I had to remessage as pollution reductions because back that was well before now. It was back in the year around 2000 when we had not signed the Kyoto Protocol. Even before. I was sitting at an event that I'd helped organize for my company. It was a Habitat for Humanity charity event. And I was in the grandstands with some of my team members and colleagues. And there was a guy on the stage from a different company called from Whirlpool talking about how they were giving appliances to every Habitat home in the building, and he was describing his job. And one of the people next to me, a guy named Tom Milwee, turned to me and said, "I could see you doing that." And I said, "That's not a real job." And he looked me right in the eye and he said, "Looks pretty real to me."
Interesting. So just by chance, you
Yeah,
fell into the role.
yeah.
And so how long have you been sustainability manager?
Well, I've been in sustainability in various roles because for a number of different organizations for over 20 years now. And I've been very blessed at having gotten involved in the early days of the movement, to have met some amazing people
Yeah.
and who have been very giving of their time and their talent and their expertise in helping me in my journey of learning all about this because it is evolving.
Mhm.
And best practices are emerging every day, whether they're technological or um, programmatic, and the standards are changing in terms of what we expect. It's interesting working globally. You talk about doing good. What is good? It's defined by your culture. It's also defined by rules of law. By just
Mhm.
obeying the law is the bare minimum, right? We don't break the law is not exactly a leading position, but
Yeah.
different cultures and societies view things differently. Whether it's equal rights, I mentioned that one. I've done work on on wage parity.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that works a lot better in Europe than it does in the U.S., where laws have been passed about paying women the same as men. Um, and so what's right? And often we go with our gut feelings, and those are based on how we've grown up and where we've grown up. But and that gets back to the Sustainable Development Goals, which are sort of an effort to put a framework to what are the fundamental human rights and fundamental human obligations.
Yeah, because I think the sustainable development goals are you're right, they're a good framework. They're a good guidepost to all nations to be like, this is what we've agreed on. Here are the most pressing issues, and countries and companies can be held accountable to them as well.
Absolutely, and people use the expression like a North Star. They give you an idea of where you're supposed to go,
Mhm.
but I would say that in some cases they just offer you a direction. Let's say north, but the roadmap may be different depending on where you are in terms of how you get there, what you need to do first, second, and third to get there. So that's why I think you said guidepost or roadmap or goal. I think those are important things because we're all in different places in our personal as well as professional journeys. And I mentioned I've been doing sustainability for this long, but it's been in a number of different roles because once you start doing it, you find that it really goes into almost every aspect of any business, whether it's communications, internally, externally, strategy, um, environmental, health, safety, human resources, the list goes on and on. And those risk management, these are all the departments with whom I've collaborated over the years, all the internal allies. And sometimes I've been in, right now I'm in the strategy department, but as in the communications department, it doesn't matter where you sit in the organization. If you're in the organization, you can point to that North Star and help the company move in that direction. And as long as the company is willing and is desirous of doing that, then I find you get a lot of latitude.
Well, it's gonna be a difficult challenge, especially the bigger the organisation you are.
Oh yes.
Because every decision that you make could have a positive or negative impact on the activities of another department. So you have to take that into consideration.
It's a value chain approach. You have to look at everything, because it's sort of like climate. It's like food waste. I'll go back to that example. If I'm a restaurant and I want to reduce food waste in my organization, I give people who don't finish their meal a to-go box. Now, my food waste, and therefore my cost of disposing of that food, goes down. I'm not contributing to food waste. All I've done is shift it to my customers.
Yeah.
And if they take it home and don't eat it, then the food waste has just moved up the value chain. It hasn't been eliminated.
Yeah. Because
and the same thing within an organization.
Yeah. Interesting. Great. That's interesting to hear how you got involved just by chance, and I can't imagine how difficult and exciting and I guess changing your role must be in your organisation. It's definitely a tough time for yourself. Is there anything that you have been a part of in recent times, so with the COVID outbreak, that you're implementing in WGL just now?
Well, one of the things is I run our Telework program. And so we were set up for, and there's some positions that can't telework. Some people work in the field, they're doing maintenance, they're making sure the energy is being delivered. They're on the poles or digging the holes, so to speak.
Unless you give them robots that can do the job, then there's no way.
Always going to need the human element. Always, my friend.
Yeah.
But having set up the company and being part of that program, helping us to go virtual has been something I was able to be involved with. And prior to this, I was working part-time in the US and part-time in Paris. And so I was virtual a lot of the time. And at one point, my supervisor asked me to write a memo on what I thought it took to be successful as a virtual employee. I was the first virtual employee on my team. And so I found that old memo and I broke it up and came up with the 6 tips, and I put them on LinkedIn. 6 tips for how to be an effective and productive teleworker, because work from home is easy, but it's physically okay. I'm here, I don't have to commute, but how do you focus on work? What are the psychological tricks? What are the physical things you need to do? You've got children in the house with you or pets. How do you manage that? How do you focus on work if you're in a space that looks, the pile of laundry is just sitting right over to the camera? Mine isn't, but it's deliberate, because if you see that, you say, okay, let me just go do that, and the next thing you know, you've just lost 2 hours of work. And other tips and tips and tricks. And I shared them with my company as well as putting them on LinkedIn. Say, this is my experience in doing telework. We're going to all be, or a lot of us will be moving to this, and our managers are not comfortable with it, and some of us are not comfortable with it. How do we do it? And by framing it as how to be a productive teleworker, I think was important, because obviously our company, we have to get the work done, regardless of where we're located. But the interesting thing that's going to come of this is I wonder how many people are going to sign up for a telework program after the COVID situation is over, because their managers have suddenly gotten comfortable with, okay, it worked pretty well. We came up with systems that worked, and I don't need you to come into the office. And I could see us combining our workspaces, making them smaller, and actually having a smaller footprint. Because do we really need all those offices if people don't need to be in them? Or we were talking before this about doing a shared office, like where, let's say, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I worked in this space, and Tuesday and Thursday the other person did, and we pay for one office rather than 2 as a company. So those are kind of, things come up all the time that that intersect. There's all these confluences.
Well, I think this is going to change the way we work forever. I think a lot of companies are going to, once they get, so that the hardest part is going to be the transition from working in an office to working from home. But once people start to get used to it and can productively work from home, then it might be the case that we've actually reduced a lot of emissions productivity has went through the roof, and we can save costs on not having that building, or not, having to cater for 1,000 employees in the one building. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how companies adapt after this test, because it is like a test. This is a mass test of figuring out how well companies can work from home.
And I think the situation will be that some roles will work from home and some won't. Some people are better at it. Some people like it. Some people want that interaction. Some people are able to put themselves out there even if they are working from home, and not just send emails. That's one of the tips I gave is don't rely only on email. Pick up the phone, call, do the video conference, see each other, and don't just be transactional, because we're a relational species. If we only ask when we want something, it's like asking a stranger to do you a favor. But think about all the, in work or in university or in school, the hallway conversations, the informal conversations, those touches of humanity. So it's going to be interesting. But you raised a point. What happens if we find a way to do it cheaper, better, faster? Why wouldn't we?
Yeah, very true.
The organizational effectiveness people will be all over it. It won't be. That's where it becomes sustainable. It becomes part of the business model and built into the strategy and the operating procedures. It becomes the best practices, which eventually become the standard practices.
Yeah. Well, if you could link to that post, if I can, I'll probably put a link in the comments when I post this on LinkedIn, because I think that would be really useful to a lot of people to figure that out.
I created a graphic, so I'll send it to you, and you can pop it onto the post, or I can do it myself, no problem. We follow each other on LinkedIn. We met on LinkedIn.
Yeah, we did. We did.
Well, you think about it. 1/3 of all marriages start online now. People think working from home is a hardship. You and I have never met in person. Maybe one day we will, and that'd be great. But you can actually make real connections and maintain connections online. It's not like the 18th century where you had to wait, 6 months for a letter, and you spent that time wondering if the person who was across the world was alive or dead, in some cases.
Yeah, no, true. And I think we're going to really start to appreciate how good technology is at keeping us connected in work and personally as well. So with friends that we're not able to see anymore.
I'm impressed with how this technology is working. I've got the earbuds in just because didn't want you going through the house, but you could be right next door.
Yeah, exactly. So it's amazing. Well, I think we could talk for hours, and it would be
no one would be watching.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a reason TV shows don't go on that long.
So without going on too much and getting too into this conversation, it's been amazing having you on, John. I've definitely learned a lot. Your tips and advice are going to be put to good use, and I hope that viewers have appreciated your advice as much as I have. Just before we go, where can people find you, and is there anything that you're coming up? So you mentioned that you're releasing a book soon. If you want to tell people about that and where they can find you as well.
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. Obviously, if you're watching this, it's connected. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm John Friedman on LinkedIn. I'm at John Friedman on Twitter. And that has my LinkedIn connection as well. The book is called Managing Sustainability from First Steps to First Class. It's coming from Business Expert Press. It's due to be released in April. So by the time this runs, it may be on the website. If you go to businessexpertpress.com, it should be there as either a released book or a forthcoming book, or you can get me through LinkedIn. And I'm more than happy to I promise if you connect with me and ask for it, I'll just send you one email when it's released and available, and it will be on Amazon as well. That page isn't quite up and running yet. So I'm here and happy to engage.
Brilliant. No, excited to read it, and I'm pretty sure I'll be one of the first people to buy it. And I'll let you know.
Hopefully not the last.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it won't be, and hopefully we get some sales for you through this.
Well, I hope people find it helpful. It's really, you know, the method and methodologies that I've used that have been successful, as well as I interviewed a number of people for it and for some of my blogging over the years who were very gracious with their time. So it's not just my ideas, it's ideas that from around the world that have been shown to be effective.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, to everyone watching, thanks very much for tuning in to Are You Serious? And I'll see you next time.
And thanks for having me, Paul. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Cheers, John.